Hello, it's Library Day, and today we're going to read a book by Ogamura, and it's called Thank You, Amu. It has won a couple of awards, the Caldecott Honor Award, which is one of the best picture books of the year, and also the Coretta Scott King Award, the award that is given by a foundation that is run by Coretta Scott King, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s wife. So this book is considered a special picture book, and its illustrations are award-winning. Now, the illustrations are made out of something we call collage, and collage can be cut out of painted paper, patterns, old books, or materials. And if you look at this book, you can see that it appears that there's a building on this page, but as you look closely, you can see that some of the windows are cut out with old book pages. There are many artists that use collage for their artwork. In fact, I have a few to show you. One is from the book Out of Wonder, Poems Celebrating Poets, and it's illustrated by Akua Holmes. And here's an example of collage. Now, he also used old book pages in his windows, didn't he? And then he cut out flowers and other illustrations for his paintings. And a very famous collage illustrator you might know is Eric Carle, who wrote The Very Hungry Caterpillar. All of his drawings are cut out of paper that he painted. There's an artist named Matisse who was a painter, and when he got sick and couldn't stand long enough to stand at the easel where his paintings were, he started using scissors to cut out and make collage art. And this book about Henri Matisse is actually called Drawing with Scissors. It's an interesting way to express yourself in art. Maybe you've tried it? This book, Thank You, Amu. Amu is the Igbo term for queen. Igbo is a language in Nigeria, and Amu means queen. The artist wrote a note, and it's in the back of the book, so I'm going to read it to you, that kind of explains why she wrote this folktale. It says, in Igbo, the Nigerian language of my parents, Amu means queen. Yet for me growing up, it meant grandma. So she called her grandma Amu, but it does mean queen. When my grandmother cooked, she would dance and sway her hips to the radio as she stirred what was often a large pot of stew. And in the evening, my family would come together at the dinner table for her meal. If a neighbor happened to be visiting, they were invited. If a friend stopped by, they were invited. Everyone in the community had a seat at my grandmother's table. Now, while my grandmother has since passed away, her giving heart has stayed with me. I see it in my mother, my godmother, my teachers, my mentors, and the other countless powerful women who have shaped my life. This book is a celebration of their loving, giving spirit. Thank you. Thank you, Amu. What could possibly smell so yummy? Well, on the corner of First Street and Long Street, on the very top floor, Amu was cooking a thick red stew in a big fat pot for a nice evening meal. She seasoned it, and she stirred it, and she took a small taste. What a delicious stew, Amu said. Tonight's dinner will surely be the best that I've ever had. Well, with that, Amu put down her spoon and went to read a book before supper. As the thick red stew simmered on the stove, its scrumptious scent wafted out the window and out the door and down the hall toward the street and around the block until someone was at the door. When Amu opened it, she saw, here she is reading her book. There's the scent or the aroma of the stew wafting out. And who is this? She saw a little boy. "Little boy," Amu exclaimed, "what brings you to my home?" "Well, I was playing with my race car down the hall when I smelled the most delicious smell," the little boy replied. "What is it?" "It's thick red stew." Stew. He sighed. "That sounds yummy." Amu thought for a moment. She was saving her stew for dinner, but she had made quite a bit. It wouldn't hurt to share. "Would you like some?" she asked, and the little boy nodded. And so Amu spooned out some of that thick red stew from the big fat pot of her nice evening meal. "Thank you, Amu," the little boy said, and he went on his way. With that, Amu closed the door and went back to her book. As she read, her thick stew, her red stew's scrumptious scent wafted out the window, out the door, and down the hall toward the street and around the block until... Can you see who's coming? Someone was at the door. And when Amu opened the door this time, she saw a police officer. "Miss Police Officer," Amu exclaimed, "what brings you to my house?" "Well, I was on duty down the street and I smelled the most delicious smell," Miss Police Officer replied. "What is it?" "Thick red stew." "Ah, stew," she said, and her mouth watered. "That sounds mighty tasty." Amu thought for a moment. There was still enough to share. "Would you like some?" The police officer nodded, and once again Amu spooned out some thick red stew from the big fat pot for her nice evening meal. "Thank you, Amu," the officer said, and went on her way. And for the second time, Amu closed the door and went back to her book. Sure enough, as she read, her thick red stew's scrumptious scent wafted out the window and out the door and down the hall toward the street and around the block until again someone was at Amu's door. Wonder who it could be. This time when she opened the door, she saw a hot dog vendor. "Mr. Hot Dog Vendor," Amu exclaimed, "what brings you to my home?" "Well, I was selling hot dogs down the block when I smelled the most delicious smell," Mr. Hot Dog Vendor replied. "What is it?" "Thick red stew." "Oh, stew," the vendor licked his lips. That sounds quite delectable." So Amu spooned out some thick red stew from the big fat pot for her nice evening meal. "Thank you, Amu," the hot dog vendor said, and he went away. Throughout the day, people from all across the neighborhood knocked on Amu's door. She fed a shop owner, a cab driver, a doctor, an actor, a lawyer, a dancer, a baker, an artist, and a singer. Also an athlete, a bus driver, a construction worker, even the mayor stopped by. And each time they knocked, Amu shared. Soon the sky darkened, the street lights brightened, and it was finally time for Amu's dinner. But when Amu opened her big fat pot of thick red stew for her nice evening meal, it was empty. Amu sniffled. "There goes the best dinner I ever had." Sorry and blue, she sat at the table with her empty pot until... Who could that be? Amu wondered. When she opened her door, she saw the little boy, the police officer, the hot dog vendor, the shop owner, the cab driver, the doctor, the actor, the lawyer, the dancer, the baker. Why, everyone that she had fed today was at her door. "I'm sorry, everyone," Amu said. "My thick red stew is all gone. I have nothing left to share." The little boy tugged at Amu's sleeve. "Don't worry, Amu. We're not here to ask. We're here to give." The police officer carried in a fresh salad. The mayor entered with a roast chicken. The baker brought a collection of sweet goodies, and even the little boy presented Amu with something special. It was in a tiny red envelope. Everyone who had knocked on Amu's door that day squeezed inside her tiny apartment, and together they ate, danced, and celebrated. While Amu's big fat pot of thick red stew was empty, her heart was full of happiness and love. That dinner was the best that she ever had. And you know what was inside the red envelope? A thank you note. Thank you, Amu. And in this spirit of Thanksgiving, the season of Thanksgiving, before we part, I wanted to point out a book called Thanks a Million. It's a poetry book, and the poems are by a woman named Nikki Grimes, and the pictures are by Cosby Cabrera. There are two very, very, very short poems. One is like a riddle. So I will tell you the riddle and see if you can guess what it is. It's called Mystery. Rich or poor, we all own two tiny treasures. Worthless if saved, priceless when spent. What are they? Two tiny treasures, worthless if we keep them to ourselves, priceless when they are spent or given. What are they? They are actually two words. Can you guess? The words are thank you. And one more. This poem is called A Lesson from the Deaf. First, Sweep one hand up to your mouth as if to blow a kiss, like this. Second, drop that hand into the other. Crisscross, palms staring up at the sky. Do you see how clever your hands create a butterfly? Think of shadows that you shape upon a wall at night, but this is more than play. If you stand before someone who has been kind to you, follow steps 1 and 2 without breathing a word. Your thank you will be heard. That is how, in sign language, you say thank you. Very simple. Sweep your hand up to your mouth as though you're going to blow a kiss. Bring it down onto your other palm. Thank you. So to you, I say, for coming to Library Day with me and sharing the books about gratitude, Thanksgiving. And I'll see you soon.